The FCC did announce that they've revamped the DIRS, the Disaster Information Reporting System, which is, I don't know, what can I say? If you're off the air or you're functioning on a generator or something, the FCC wants to know about it. Theoretically, to help you with an STA or something, but I keep hearing from people about in small markets and contract engineers don't have the time to go play with that website, even if it's been revamped. There will be a test of it, I think, here coming up June the 10th or 12th, and you'll get to look at it. They find that only,
Baby, you're on Harley. You're on
sorry,
Harley.
sorry, Mary, you said,
What's up with that?
um, I don't think, I don't
Uh-oh.
think, I don't think Mary meant to be heard. And so now she's not. Uh, the FCC reports that only 25 or 30% of the stations in disaster areas actually report to them. And of course, again, there's a balance. There's somebody up there that's collecting this information. And what good does it do for a report down the road? But you want help right now if you're off the air. The commission is talking about making DIRS mandatory. And the NAB and many station groups are saying, hold to your horses. This is just a little bit too far. But let's talk about what happens about storms. And the hurricane season is supposed to start here on Saturday officially. Uh, but the tornadoes and other things, of course, have preempted that as an opening day. They say the monsoon will hit here in southern Arizona, usually in early July. A lot of wind, a lot of rain, and fills up all the washes. But what do you do? What do you do to get ready for a storm? And what do you do if a storm hits your area? And I think there are a lot of things that you might want to share with us. And I invite you to. I muted all the microphones because Mary was having some problems there. So you can raise your hand, or you can hit alternate A or your space bar to join in here. And let's talk about some of the things you want to do. For instance, this is a good time to test the integrity of your tower. Now, what do I mean by that? Have you gone out recently and stuck your hand on the guy wires to see how far they run around once you let go? Guy wire tensioning is very important. Of course, so is the guy anchor. And you want to make sure that that is able to withstand the problems that a storm could cause. In the building, you have weather stripping issues. You don't want water to come in. What was that picture that Jeff Welton sent us about a site that was filled with snow? I've got one on the BDR site where the water came in up to the midpoint on a transmitter. Those are things that you want to know. What about the generator? Have you checked your generator lately? I received some information from big news station, and the power went off in the city yesterday morning about 6:30, right in the middle of morning drive and all this weather. And it took about an hour for the engineer to get out to the transmitter to find out that generator was not running, showed failure. And you sit there and you say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is the generator in error mode? And turns out that particular generator was low on coolant. The question is, when was it last checked on? We don't know. I don't want to point a finger at that one station. Here's another case. There's an earthquake in San Francisco, 1988, I believe. and power went out, and the generators kicked in. Big 50 kilowatt flamethrower back on the air, news and information. And it was really helpful to the people until 60 minutes later, it went off the air. Investigation showed that the day tank pump was wired to city power. In fact, I got a note yesterday that in Dallas, one of the IT hubs had a similar problem. Didn't knock them out, but they were losing air conditioning because the air conditioning condenser system, which is supposed to discharge the water when it collects it, again, was hooked to utility power rather than the feed from the generator. So it's important that the power for things like your day tank follow uh, the transfer switch. Yeah. What else can we talk about? How about information where you can contact utilities to report your outages or your needs, especially the power company? How about emergency food? Should there be food at your transmitter site? Some people might say, no, the animals are going to come in. Well, you certainly wouldn't store food at a transmitter site in a way that could attract animals. You'd lock it up pretty good, maybe in a metal cabinet or something. But those are the sort of things that come to mind. Maybe you've got some more tips here that we should talk about getting these things maybe on a list to check out. Um, the FCC, of course, is talking about AM radio being important during the uh, disasters. How important is AM radio? Is it got more reach than FM? I don't know. Depends on the station, right? 100 kilowatt FM on a tall tower probably can outdistance all but the biggest AMs. There was something about the PEP transmitters over the past several months. I'm given to understand that the monthly test is being initiated from the PEPs one after another to ensure that they can do that. All these are in preparation for things we hope we don't ever have to do because we hope that there isn't going to be a storm coming into our neighborhood that's vicious and destructive. So, what have you found? What have you done to make sure your site is ready? I got another one for you. And this kind of almost bleeds over into IT. Suppose your studio gets hit, burned, destroyed, whatever. How are you going to get audio on the air? Or are you going to just throw a dead carrier? Now, I know some stations actually put a computer out there at their transmitter site on the network and update it every day with their automation system so that should the studio suddenly die, the station will stay on the air and certainly give time for some staff to get out there. Well, what do they do? If there's a transmitter there in a noisy room, are you going to do programming from there? Of course, now with the latest streaming and things like that, some of the home office studios that some of the staff might be using, they might be able to initiate. But can you transfer their incoming audio to the processing and transmitter? That's the question. What about access? Can you get to these sites? And I think this was yours that you mentioned to me, Mark. Uh, you have backups. Again, you hope that you'll never have a studio loss completely, but the question is backups, not just your air transmissions, your automation system. What about the administrators' computers, the things that run payroll and healthcare? Those need to be backed up too, don't they? And off-site. And Mark mentions too, testing the generator, not just checking that it will turn on and run, but checking it under a load. So those are important things that you want to take care of before a storm hits, before there's a problem. So that's my big spiel. And I, again, welcome your comments. I see there's been some comments up in the chat box, but you're welcome to join us and talk. Uh, again, alternate A, space bar.
I've also found, hey Barry, how you doing?
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I've also found it, along with what Mark had to say there, that you want your meter number and you want your account number to be able to report all of these outages and all of that for your power. And most, at least down here in Florida, most of them actually have an online coverage map that lets you know where they're experiencing outages and all of that for your power. So that is very helpful. So I have all of that in a spreadsheet where I can hit links to it and pull it all up and access my meter number and account number and the little pin to show that you're an authorized person to deal with the account and all of that fun stuff. So
Very
having all
good.
that ready is
I keep all that on my phone since I always have
smart.
it with me.
Nice.
Very good, Josh. And I'll add one aspect to what you said that I found in a case here locally. Not just having the account number and the location or the pole number. Sometimes you have to arrange to have access. We had a problem with one Native American station here, and they asked me to come down and take a look. And I called the phone company because it was a issue with their internet connection. And I told them the IP address and the account. And well, you don't have authority to contact us for support.
Right.
And yeah, and so I went round and round, finally got the GM to call and tell them off. But it might be important is
You're on the account. Right.
have your name and number on the account.
Yeah.
Precisely. Mark, where are you on that?
I get my unmuted. I'm good. Uh, if I want to share, you let me share my thing. I'll show you guys a few pictures.
Sure. You also mentioned here on the chat that you want the meter number, not just the
Here
account.
in Texas, at least with our companies, there's a long meter number. It's about 18 digits. If you have that when you talk to dispatch, they can figure out everything. If you don't have that, then they don't know much.
Yep.
What I've found they can't figure out with that is if you have one leg out.
That,
As long
yes.
I'll
Yeah,
run into that.
I have that on my telemetry, but they don't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's it. No, your meter's got power. Like, nope, not on all three legs.
If phase A is out, they go, "Oh, how'd you know that?"
Right. Exactly.
It is funny.
As mentioned here in the chat box that internet is less reliable than power in some places, and that's true. Obviously, if the power goes down, the internet's going to go down. Even cell phone connected, you're going to lose pretty quickly in a disaster because all those batteries, they won't last forever, and that's an issue. So having something that is on site that you can use with your generator is so important.
And you probably already mentioned it, but just your generator fuel levels. Make sure your tanks are all topped off, at least to the 80%.
Yeah. And here again, I'm not a huge uh, mechanic on generators, but you need to keep the fuel fresh, don't you?
For diesel, yes, or gasoline, it'll go bad just sitting there.
How can you tell, Mark? What do you do?
I take a sample and send it off about a month before hurricane season. Now, the other way to do it is I also have had this done with diesel fuel. Is the service companies that we use have a little pickup truck, and they run the fuel through the truck and filter it and take samples as they do that. But they basically can get out all the algae that has grown. You can also throw in a pill. It looks like a big donut. Throw that in the tank, and it'll eat the algae up.
I would imagine that the size of the pill or the frequency of use depends on the size of the tank.
And the temperature also, yes, it does. That's why I just have it done every couple of months by the pros. I let them deal with it. They don't charge much and they take care of it.
The question is raised, where can one get diesel tested?
Typically, wherever you get your diesel from, if you use a service like Fleetwing or whoever's in your area, they will also have a testing service.
Okay,
That's where I've got mine tested.
good. What about propane? Do you have to do anything about propane to be proactive?
Propane, other than a leak, propane just stays good as long as you don't leak it out.
So you at least have to check the meter from time to time.
I would also emphasize the battery maintenance. It can often be overlooked. Got bit once when it went off the air and the generator didn't start. Fortunately, it was a very short outage. It was 4 or 5 minutes. By the time I was on the road, it was back on. But when I got out there, the generator opened the doors of the generator, noticed the cap was off one of the cells in the battery, and it was somewhere inside the cabinet. I did find it eventually. These batteries were 3 years old, but apparently were short one of the last ability to crank the generator, and the cell blew when it called for the generator. So probably batteries need to be replaced from periodically, whether they need it or not.
Well, it depends on where you are. Out here on the desert, they don't last as long as they will in some climates, for sure. But you raise a very important point, the condition of the battery. Now, with that comes the key to the generator. Again, I know all these stories because people have told me. At one of the big consolidators, power went out, generator didn't come on. The chief engineer went out back to figure out what's going on and discovered that it was locked and there was no key. And so it took a while for him to come up with a scheme. I think it was a large screwdriver, quite frankly, but he opened it up and it was a battery issue and jumper cables were found and the generator was started, but a lot of airtime was lost that otherwise would not have been lost. A lot of dead air.
With regard to the meters, if you will, the electric meters we were discussing a while ago.
Hi, Denny.
How are y'all today? I'm here for once. Not off working somewhere. Encore in Dallas, reason Carol D was off, they had 500,000 customers off in Garland on the east side of Dallas. Some of the large part of that was transmission line stuff. I will mention about Encore has, like most of the companies around, they have remote meter monitoring, if you will. But I did discover some time ago that in the case of Encore, if there's not 2 meters on the end of the line on the feed, they won't monitor the meter. There has to be 2 meters on the end of the line for whatever reason, doesn't make sense to me, for them to automatically determine that the power is off at a site. And this is at a major site, but it does not have AM or FM transmitters. So you have to discover it yourself either by your own monitoring or waiting for calls.
Well,
And you are correct. They do not, on the three-phase meters, they don't have the intelligence to measure, the meters don't have the intelligence to measure whether or not all three phases are connected.
and again, as was mentioned, if the power goes out, the internet may go down and you may not get an alert anyway.
Right.
So it's important to have alternate means of getting in. Some of those dial-up remote controls are still useful.
Hopefully your equipment rack has a UPS that holds up long enough that you can get a notification from your Burke or whatever device you're using to send out that power went down.
Yep, that's a very good point. Especially if the Jenny doesn't come up.
One other thing about the generators, you were talking about having fuel tested. I know we got a couple of big cats, and if we take oil samples into the cat dealer, they'll actually test the oil to see if if they find any shavings or anything in it, whatever, and tell you what shape the oil is in. Of course, you should change it every once in a while, but when it holds 16 or 18 gallons, you're a little reluctant to do that every year.
And finding a company that will do that in an economical way is not always easy. If you're out in an isolated area, just the travel charge could far exceed the cost of the actual maintenance. So you might want to do something not dissimilar to what stations do with NRSC, and that is talk together and get the generator guy to make a route to cut down on travel expenses. I don't know if anybody's ever done that or not, but it would seem to me to be a smart thing to do. You might not get the maintenance done on the same day that you want it, but you might save, I don't know, hundreds of dollars, maybe more. Of course, being off the air in a big city, hundreds of dollars is chicken feed, isn't it?
Not a good thing.
Did you ever lose power, Rich?
We did, but we had, let's see, at WOR, we had generators at the studio and the transmitter. At XTRA, we had to have a generator at the transmitter site because power was pretty unreliable. But the interesting thing about it, it was cheaper to run off the generator full time than it was to use utility power. But since the utility was owned by the government, that was illegal. And I do remember an incident many years ago where the generator had been tested regularly, and when the time came to actually need it, the start button had worn out from all the testing.
Well, you have to check everything, don't you, as you go around?
Yes.
Jim, did I see you starting to talk a minute ago?
Yeah, we've got 3 generators in our network, and we run them automatically. Once a week. I was wondering if I thought everybody did that. I was wondering if that's common or not common. They're all propane powered.
Dave, it is staggeringly uncommon in many places for there to be regular checks on a generator. I've been to many, many stations where when I ask, what was the last time you ran the Jenny? And the answer generally is, I don't know. And sometimes if you check their logs, such as they are, they really, truly don't know.
Barry,
Hi, Marv.
hi. My experience has been I like to test the generator myself regularly. And the reason for that is I want to hear the generator start up and see what it does, because I didn't like the idea of it going on a time clock and nobody being there, because you don't know if it's surging or whatever crazy thing it might be doing. So I always defeated the time clock and tested it myself on a regular basis. And sometimes I'd see something happen and I'd call the generator maintenance company because it didn't start and run quite right. It would run, but it was surging or doing something. So I wanted to be aware of all that.
Did you use a transfer to load the Jenny at the time?
Sometimes, not regularly, but sometimes I did.
Does it make a different sound?
Yeah, I'd like to have transferred to the load all the time and run it that way, but I was always a little nervous about the surge through all the equipment and all that. Would it survive that? A very clever thing, though, that they did up on Flint Peak on a site that I visited. They put a big generator up there to cover the whole site, and then they put a dummy load in front of the radiator on the generator so that when it exercised under load.
Well, there's one way of loading it. We had a TV station here in the mountains that ran on a generator constantly because they couldn't get sufficient power up there. But I haven't heard very often where it was cheaper to run on a generator than on city power.
Yeah, that surprises me also. Over on Catalina Island, they used to run a generator full time over there for KBIG. Of course, over on the Catalina Island, the Southern California Edison has generators over there to power the whole island. So everybody's on a generator over there, actually.
Interesting.
KBIG was on Catalina?
Yeah,
Yep.
it was.
Oh,
AM.
For many, many years. It only recently moved to Orange County.
oh, yeah, you're talking about the AM, Barry.
You're right.
Okay, I'm talking about the FM.
No, that was in LA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was up on Mount Wilson.
Right.
Yeah, I remember visiting out to KBIG once, and I remember them having two generators. While one ran, they did service on the other, and then just flipped back and forth between the two generators.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I remember that also.
Barry, I'd throw in, if you're going to run automatic tests, wire it into your remote, obviously, so that it calls you, but also schedule them for Monday, preferably mid-morning. That way, you got a problem. You can get somebody from the generator company out there that week, better than later in the week, and you're running into a weekend and you can't get somebody out there. You got to pay them weekend time to show up.
That's a good idea.
And the other thing I would throw in is go take pictures of your meters while they're operating, because it's a lot more fun to look up information from the cab of a dry vehicle or your truck than it is to stand out there in the pouring rain and try and snap a picture when you're in the middle of it. It saved me wet shoes a few times having all that stuff in hand.
Mark just posted a little thought here about security of your disconnect. Generator or not, can the public get to your disconnect? That's probably not a good thing.
Well, worse than that, Barry, is I had an episode. I had an episode at KBLA where they came in and tried to take the wiring, the big heavy wiring that went out to the generator, tried to steal that copper. Thing that saved us was they cut into a part of it that was live and hot, and so when the sparks flew, I think that discouraged them. But they did a lot of damage before they got the shocking experience.
Well, this goes back about 20 years now, I would think, when they were rebuilding that site. You're talking the 1540 in LA, right?
1580.
1580? Oh, I'm sorry. The other one was the one out there in East LA, and
Yeah,
they were stealing the ground system. They're plowing one side in, the other side was being stolen.
it was almost that bad. I was personally involved in that when I was putting ground wires in during the day. Come back that next morning and say, where did those things go? So what we finally did was put in a section but had a load of gravel come in right away and cover it up, and then go to the next section and do that again. So there's never time when it was exposed overnight.
That was a smart move. I've heard of other cases of using Gorilla Snot or asphalt or other things to try to encase the copper. But yeah, they're out there, and if you don't protect your ground system, or in the earlier mention here, your disconnects, you're going to have problems. Any other ideas here about weatherproofing or getting your site ready? Now, I'm sorry to say that there are people in the Midwest. I wish Mark Voris, who was here from Omaha, he's right in the middle of that. He may have had some damage that we don't know about yet, but
That may be why he's not here.
that may be why he's not here. But down there in Corpus Christi, you're on the edge of it, Mark, and tell us a little bit about what happened.
Well, this is from 2020 when this tower went down. Let me see if I can do this. Share. Share. Yeah. Hang on. It's click. Okay, I don't care about that. Click. Try again. Share that. Okay. Participants can now see my screen.
Yep.
That's a good thing. Okay. So here, this was in 2020. Now this picture here is in a year before that. This is the cavity back radiator up on a 1,000-foot Klein tower. Very nice. And there it is, that's what we were transmitting on with several other stations. This is what happened in April of COVID year, 2020. The tower lower guy wire, one of the guy wires pulled out of the anchor, and the tower folded at about the 200-foot mark. This is where the STL dishes were. And you can see more of the tower over here and some of it over here. This one in the background is where we ended up going. That's about a mile away from the tower that's on the ground. This building was built very well. No damage to this generator or really to the building. So that's good. The engineer who went out there and saw this first surmised that the power had once again failed and the generator didn't take the load. That had happened previously. When he got there, he found out it was a lot worse than that. And I was on the phone with him when he drove up on this road. So pretty exciting morning. And there's one of the guy wires that just hung out. And there's, this was an 8-foot or a 12-foot face tower, huge, bent like a pretzel. Pretty scary. So I don't know. Now let me restart here, go the other way. This is building a new building. American Towers built us a new building for all the FMs and 3 TVs. Very nice. This is when we were moving into that new building, almost a year and a half after the first tower fell. So it took a while to get back to normal. Let me skip. This is, they're raising up the new antenna. The tower was 900 feet. They added 100 feet. And then the TV antenna is on top of that added TV section there. Pretty amazing. And this is just some of the stuff in that building. all new stuff. So we got to do it right, which is nice. And I'm looking for, there's a picture here. Hang on. This is what we did about 30 days after the tower fell. We were in this really crummy metal building, just 4 FMs crammed in there where we could put the equipment. And we were operating on I don't know if I got a picture. We were operating on a single bay antenna, very low ERP, but at least we were on the air and back sort of to covering most of our market. That took about 30 days. In our case, we were back on the air about 2 days after the tower fell because we were able to borrow the backup transmitter from another broadcaster, and they had it on a tower and an antenna. So we asked first, so we got back on the air first. So we really only lost about 40 hours of programming. But seeing that tower on the ground was just amazing because I've been out to that site numerous times, and you just don't think it's ever going to fall, but it did. So that's about what I got on that. I think I've just got more pictures of things being built. Oh, this is funny. While they were building the site, the backhoe operator was preparing the ground, and he discovered an undocumented power feed under the ground. Luckily, nobody got hurt. Just put a mark on the door, but he found it by digging. Oops. So that was pretty exciting when that went. I was out there when that happened. Made a big noise. So I'm very fortunate nobody got hurt.
I'm a little confused. If there was a local tower and a local antenna sitting there not doing anything, how did that happen?
Do what now?
Well, you said there was a local tower with an antenna sitting up there that was available to you.
Yep.
I'm confused as to why.
iHeart has a 2K transmitter and an 8-bay antenna at their studio and about a 300-foot tower. And we asked first and said, "Can we get on that?" And they said, "Sure, no problem." So we fed it with our internet stream for about a month. They were very nice.
Now, was there anything that happened that caused the guy to pull out?
Well,
Just failure.
there's a lot of theory, and a lot of this is somewhat. Let me just say, I'm speculating because I didn't own the tower or anything, but there was visible corrosion and damage to one of the guy wires where it went into the anchor on the ground.
Yeah.
And before this tower fell, there had been fencing put up by the owner, which was one of the TV stations, and it was declared that thou shalt not climb the tower. So they were aware that there was a possible problem. I don't think they understood, how close they were to losing it. I think they were going to fix it, is what they thought, and then it failed before they got around to fixing it. So that's the outside story. There may be a different inside story, but I don't know about that. And this is just getting some of our auxiliary equipment out of the original building. We had a 3K backup, which we sold, and now we've got a little rack mount transmitter to do that same thing. And this I knew I had a picture. This is one of the 3 stations that were put up within a couple of weeks on the new tower. They were on these 3 1-bay antennas. So we were radiating about 5K ERP instead of 50K ERP, but it was a whole lot better than nothing. And the American Towers did the project of building a new antenna on this tower and everything. They managed the project, and they got these antennas up very quickly. It's a very well-run project. So there is now a combined 16-bay antenna up at top and a nice new brick building and all manner of things. This is in the temporary building. We just put 4 stations in a row and declared that to be on the air. That's all we could do. So I don't think, this is just, they got those antennas and feed line up in a couple of weeks, which is very nice. This is at the original tower that fell. The air conditioners were under the ice bridge, and it moved them when the whole thing came down. It bent some of the metal, pretty serious forces. There's us getting the transmitters moved in. We just put tape on the floor and away we went. No private spaces. Everybody works on everybody's equipment, and we just got it back on the air. Very much a cooperative effort. So that was a good thing. Somewhere here, we used a big forklift to moved most of the equipment till we got it in the building.
And this is in South Texas, and you need an ice bridge?
Pardon me?
This is in South Texas, and you have an ice bridge?
Yeah. We get ice about twice a year. And when it comes down, it's in pieces about the size of a bowling ball.
Right. Interesting. I figured to do that there. It's common here in Wichita, but
We're 20 miles from the coast and we still get ice.
yeah.
Not like you get up north, but when it happens, it starts melting and it melts in big pieces. It comes off in sheets off whatever it's formed around. And if you don't have an ice bridge and don't protect your air conditioners, they get damaged. I don't have a picture of it. I drove out there one day and there was a whole field on the road of little balls about the size of a softball. They were coming down. I stopped before I got into that, but it was just raining down, softballs. And I decided I didn't want one of those going through me or my car. So I just backed out and the transmitter stayed off the air till they quit doing that. We are now working on putting up our own aux transmitter. I just learned yesterday we got funding for that. So I will have a spare site later in the year. Won't be in time for hurricane season though, but at least I'll have one. That's a positive step. Because the trouble with being on a combined antenna is it will eventually fail, just like all antennas. And now 4 stations go off the air when it fails. And if you don't have another site, you're stuck. So anyways,
Very good.
that was my adventure in the year of COVID.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Stop share, click.
Bill
Okay.
Harrier stuck up in the chat. He was the one that I mentioned earlier that just got back on the air also. His was 1,600 feet. Bill, you got any pictures you want to show us?
That link has pictures in it when it fell down.
Yeah, I just wondered if you had any personal pictures. That
No, personal. I actually have not been to the site. We were fortunate that one of our engineers has a good contact at Cox Radio. So we were able to get back on the air within 24 hours at 400 watts. And then in April of last year, we got back on the air with the transmitter. We moved to the temp site and got a pretty good signal across Atlanta. And our new tower was just completed last month. In fact, still today, they're putting fences around the guys and things like that. And so it's been quite a process. We're off the air almost 500 days with our normal transmitter. We do have a application in to use our STA site as an auxiliary site. So we'll be prepared more in the future in case it ever happens again. But thankfully, insurance paid 80% of the replacement cost, which is over $4 million for everything. So quite a feat. So it was our own tower. We owned it, one of the few towers that we own. And so ERI was the contractor for the tower. They brought their own guys in to build the tower and put the antenna on and all.
Okay, thank you. It was mentioned that the guy anchor is important to the setup. And this was one locally that we had, which in a strong wind brought down a tower, which then brought down another tower, so that a 4-stick array became 2.
Oops.
It was not a very good situation. They also had a rather unique way of securing their their gate. I wasn't all that impressed. Of course, even with the fence up, it wasn't exactly keep the public away. As far as I know, they were never inspected, so I can't say whether that would have been frowned upon or not.
That picture of the post, was that a piece of railroad track? Couple of pictures back, Barry.
That
Almost looks like that's a railroad track.
No, it's just
Just a piece of
yeah.
formed post, formed steel.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's one station I can tell you for sure that a lack of maintenance and combined with a storm, knocked over not one but two. So yeah, just got an email in here. It says Apple update disrupts podcast downloads. Low softened for some stations. So much for updates in Windows, huh? Well, let's turn our attention a little more on the IT side for a moment. On someone else has a tower or site issue that they'd like to bring up. IT is an important factor, and when a disaster hits, it becomes critical because of so many things that operate over the LAN as well as the WAN. And if you are up and running and everything seems smooth, it doesn't take a lot and you can really find yourself wrecked because did you take your STL down? That old Marty, that old Mosley that you weren't using anymore? Somebody just posted a few used Martys for $30 on the BDR. If I were running a site, I might consider that a good backup these days. But when you're looking at the internet going down, you lose control, you lose your audio, you lose your alarm system. And I can think of some other things, whether it be your entry, remote entry. So what do you do? How do you back up your internet? Is there anyone with us today that uses two feeds from two different internet sources, maybe from the cable company and from a phone company?
Cellular. Yep.
We have at KABC, we had the primary feed was on a 100 megabit line that actually went to the data center in Las Vegas. But that's where most of our stuff was. We had a backup system that was a local over-the-air carrier, microwave carrier. So we did have two systems and a set for automatic failover in the router. And it actually, once it did fail over and we hardly noticed it.
Josh, you were talking about using a cellular link.
Yeah. So we're trying to get at least two ISPs at every site across Moody. And we have AT&T hotspots as our secondary ISP. Then we've been using these TrendNet routers that will do 4 WANs. And so they'll do auto failover to the secondary WAN or your tertiary WAN if your primary goes out. So that's kind of what we're setting up and trying to model.
If your situation were lengthy and the cell site ran down its battery, what would happen?
Meaning power's out.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the generator's running. It would be ideal. But yeah, That would be so my primary STL is satellite uplink. So we're uplinking from our studio here. And so as long as the bird is still alive, then I'm okay.
Okay, so you're not dependent upon internet for your audio feed.
It's my backup.
Okay.
Yep.
Is anyone using Starlink?
We do have Starlink at our KMBI site in Washington, and it's been down for the last 6 months. So we got to get out there and figure out what's going on with Elon's equipment.
I think a couple stations up in Alaska are using the Starlink now.
We have Starlink, but one of the problems that you have with Starlink, they won't give you a static IP address unless I think you buy the professional plan or something.
You've got to get the business account, which is a lot more money. And we did get it. It is, when it works great. But it's currently not working. So not a great not a great salesman for it currently.
All
Maybe
right.
accounts payable failed to pay the bill.
Yes, that helps.
Well, let's turn to something a little more. I don't know if how many people are really going to have their eyes glaze over or not. But Danny, as long as you're there, could you talk?
I know nothing to just work here.
Could
That's
you
my
talk
stock answer. Go ahead.
a little bit?
By the way, I was going to mention, he's talking about the failover with the TrendNet. We have several PepLink devices. The PepLink devices that we have will take up to, I think, 3, let's call it Ethernet connections, and they also have automatic failover to a cellular modem if you want to include that. So you have a main, a primary, and a secondary, and then you can go to it'll fail over to cellular.
Okay. Danny, for those of you that don't know, runs several ISPs in addition to his radio stations and serves dozens of customers in his area there. Danny, talk to us, if you would, a little bit about this DMARC, DKIM, SPF business that Gmail and Yahoo and AOL have cottoned on to, which has caused a lot of disruption for a number of users.
Well, there's guys that's going to know a lot more about it than I do, but basically it boiled down to they won't pass any data, or just say email, through their system unless you've got this. There's 2 or 3 different things that they want to see basically regarding what you just mentioned coming out of your server that basically says that the email is okay.
And this is a problem for end users who are not aware of where they get their email from. Because if you find somebody that you send an email to and you don't hear from them, it could be one side or the other does not quite measure up to Google's way of doing things anymore.
Yeah, not only the Gmail accounts, but there's a lot of people that use Gmail services, I guess you'd say, as their primary domain, if you will, routes through them. And so there's several places that I've seen that you can't get to because of that.
Well, anyone have any question or observation about that? I know that a lot of folks used the Gmail account for their transmitter remote control. And when Gmail changed and required some special authentication, that kind of broke the chain, as it were.
That is correct. I think it went in effect, in February, something of that nature. They gave some advance notice, but I think it was February, if I recall correctly.
Well, it
Yeah,
does-
they made it to where you had to have a device password for older devices and a bunch of hoops to jump through. So we actually are using the Microsoft 365 we built inside of Moody relay accounts that are just for our transmitter sites, and they've been working really well. Another fix that we had for it was to build a virtual box with a PC on site. We're sending everything through postfix, and it would work on port 25, and everything was working really well with that option as well. So there's a few workarounds that you can employ for that.
I think part of that part of that declaration from them also, they were trying to purge, if I recall correctly, they were trying to purge unused email accounts. If you hadn't used the email account for several years, they just poof, it went away.
That's funny because I have one account there that I've forgotten the password to, don't have it written down anywhere. And it still works, but I can't adjust it. I can't get in there and do anything.
Another one we used for a while was GMX mail, and it gets to the point where if you have a bunch of if your Burke or your remote device sends you several emails, it starts thinking it's a spam bot and it'll block it. And then you got to contact them and say, "Hey, no, it's the real thing. We're not sending spam."
And that is the next problem. There are too many of these black hole companies which set up supposed security. And if you don't meet all their requirements, they'll block you. And Outlook, which is often not set up properly, will block email. You get these messages that there's no such user or recipient address rejected. And that means you. Doesn't make any sense, but it's the way some programmers think. Sorry? Someone said something, but maybe it's just outside thing. Anyway, I also know that VPNs have become very important. And one of the things that I'm reading more and more, the free VPNs are in many cases vulnerable, and in many other cases already have bad stuff built into them. And if you want to do a VPN, it seems to be smart to have one that you've paid for, whether as part of your modem or a separate VPN account. Has anybody had a VPN of theirs crashed? Which would bring me to Everbridge. How many of you have Everbridge or use Everbridge? It's fairly popular, I guess, among the EAS communities. They were hacked and all their customer information was taken. And they're going to put a 2FA into effect, I think, this coming week. But big companies, small companies, you hear about these ransomware attacks. You see, and it's actually more cases than not, from what I've read, is blackmail, is people downloading what they consider important or secret information and then trying to sell it back to the company. It's still Wild West out there. And, with all this stuff that we were just talking about with Google and their changes in DKIM and DMARC, it hasn't slowed the spam down at my site. I still get enough every day that if it were real, I'd never go hungry again. But that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Any other folks want to comment on disaster preparation, recovery, or IT issues today?
Has anyone else noticed that the National SBE website appears to be in distress right now. And interestingly, that fellow was on the heels of the ARRL website having what they called an incident. I love that term. About 2 weeks ago. It's been 2 weeks. They've got their homepage back up, but there are no ads. It's like a thrown together quick replacement. There's the SBE, you can't register for webinars or anything. So what's going on back there? Anybody know? Silence speaks volumes, I guess. ARL's phone system is also down, by the way, so can't even call them. Another penalty for VoIP service, I guess.
It can be. Absolutely. Well, I hope none of you out there have been hacked or are in the process. There's one company in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Maryland. They got hacked, and they thought they were okay because they just went back to work. Somebody left a Trojan in their machine, and 3 months later, they were hacked again.
Have you heard anything or read anything about OpenVPN, Barry?
That was one of the ones I thought I read about this morning.
It's one that we played with a little bit here and there, but I'm curious to see if there was any chatter on its reliability or security.
Let me see if I can bring that up here. And
then Daryl was asking about Norton VPN.
Norton is a pay.
Right.
Let's see. Let's see. I know I saw several of them here. Okay. I'm going to bring this up on the screen so that you're not just wondering what the heck I'm doing. Are you able to? Yeah.
Yes.
So let's see. This is the one that the guy just got busted recently. 911S5, Mark VPN, Dupe VPN, Paladin VPN. Let's see. I wonder if the word open appears on here. There it is.
Strong encryption.
Apparently, he's recommending OpenVPN
Okay, good.
as a good option.
The TrendNet routers have OpenVPN as part of their operating system, so it works native with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're doing some experimenting, but we're looking at getting Meraki's to build a full VPN network at some point.
So one of the things here, positive reviews and a reputation, not on TikTok, friends.
Where I get all my information is TikTok.
Yeah, right. There was a cartoon this morning. Okay, I'm gonna have to pull that one up because I think that's something that everybody can get a good quick laugh over. Yeah, see if I can bring this up from here. It is. Yeah. And this is unfortunately where far too many people are today. some folks have pointed out how difficult getting good news is, getting the truth of any matter. Depends on what news service you watch or read, and if you only read or watch one, you're really not getting the full story. You know, we work in this business. We know how news is created. Rich?
Sometimes that's the problem, that it's created.
Well, that's what I mean. It's, like the old story about a sausage, if you know how sausages were made, you'd never eat another one. But, yeah.
It used to be they would report the news. Now they create the news. It's
Well, they
completely
do.
different. Yeah.
Well, they do.